Hello, and welcome to Books in the World. I'm your host, Kathleen Murphy. Books in the World is an interview show produced by the Cape Cod Writers Center and the Cape Media Center. The Writers Center was established over 60 years ago and sponsors a 4-day writers conference every summer on Cape Cod. In August of 2023, we returned to live and in person for the conference. Books in the World has been broadcast continuously for 45 years, making it the longest-running program of its kind in the United States. The goal of this program is to show how writers, illustrators, publishers, editors, and others in the literary field play their roles in the world of books and other communication media. Today, I am delighted to welcome Bill Roorbach and talk about his latest work of fiction, Lucky Turtle. Welcome, Bill.
Thanks, Kathleen. It's great to be back.
Bill is the author of 5 previous books of fiction, including The Girl of the Lake, The Remedy for Love, which was a Kirkus Prize finalist, Life Among the Giants, a bestseller, Big Bend, a Flannery O'Connor Award, and an O. Henry Prize winner. Bill also wrote Temple Stream, his memoir in nature, which won the Maine Literary Award for nonfiction. Roorbach has received fellowships from the Civitella Rainieri Foundation and the National Endowment for the Arts. He held the William H.P. Jenks Chair in Contemporary American Letters at the College of the Holy Cross in Massachusetts. His craft book, Writing Life Stories, has been in print for 25 years. His writing has appeared in Harper's, the New York Times Magazine, The Atlantic, and many more publications. Recently released as a paperback, his latest book of fiction, Lucky Turtle, is what we'll talk about today. Gorgeously written, this fast-paced adventure in the Montana wilderness kept me turning pages. From reading Lucky Turtle, I gained new insight on contemporary problems, but not because the author redefined those problems. Rather, because he contrasts modern-day problems with simple, elemental struggles like human survival and human longing. This book will stick with you. And I'm so lucky to be able to speak with this highly acclaimed author. Thank you so much again, Bill, and welcome.
Thanks, Kathleen. That was so well said. I'll have to remember some of that.
Well, you can go back to the recording. You're all set.
Okay, good.
So tell me about Lucky Turtle. Could you describe the book for me, please?
Well, it's the story of Cindra Zeller, who gets in trouble when she's 16 back in the late 90s and gets sent to a reform camp in Montana. And she's not treated very well there. But she does meet someone named Lucky Turtle, who works at the camp. He's a fairly mysterious figure, but he really appeals to her. And after she's mistreated for the last time, he helps her run away, and they run away together to the wilderness. And that starts Act 2 of the book, really. They're wilderness idol. But like all idols, reader and writer alike know that it can't last forever. So that's kind of how it starts.
Yeah, and it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
It's so rich in character development and in setting. And I think the setting is the Montana wilderness. And was that one of the motivations that you had for writing the book in the first place?
Well, it's a subject I tried to get to for many, decades, really. I spent high school summers in Montana. I got in trouble when I was a teenager. Not as bad trouble as Cindra gets into, but just enough that my mom had it with me and sent me to live with my Uncle Bill, who was a minister in Helena. But not a minister like I feared. I thought it was going to be a summer of Jesus and prostrations, but it was. I knew he was a lovely man. Of course, I already knew him, and I really respected him. He's a hunter, a fisherman, and a minister, yes, but he didn't love preaching. He didn't love Sundays. His favorite day of his ministries was Monday. He would go out, and I would go with him. he said, we're going to go find the people. And he and he would always do this, but he'd take me on his rounds. We'd go under the highway bridges, and find we'd call them homeless now, and we know about mental health issues. But then, and I think he did know these things, but back then they were called bums and hobos and derelicts. And this was in the 60s, you know. And he would just say, here, talk to Philip here. And he'd go walk and talk to someone. And I was like, oh, I got to talk to this guy. And the guy, oh, get away from me. And I would say, so where are you from, Philip? And it would work. You would get a conversation going and realize, I was 14 the first summer I went, turning 15, that this was a human. It was a person. It was behind the label of bum or derelict or hobo, or there was this man back there who'd suffered some disaster. And that's what he was doing there. So my uncle's project was just to bring some light to these people and see if he could help them. And he did help a lot of them. He'd figure out they had a brother, and they'd contact the brother, and the brother would very often come and get them, or a parent. Some you couldn't really pull up very high, but that was his idea of what Christ's love should look like, you know. And the people at his church had mixed feelings about all of it, because he'd bring these guys to church, and they were mostly guys, and he'd bring them home for Tuesday night dinners. And one day we were walking in town looking for the people, and there's a big park. He goes, now here's someone I think you could be a great influence on. And there's this kid who's sort of my age, elegant, tall, slender, long black braids, styling himself to be Crow or Blackfeet. I think he would say Blackfeet, but my uncle said he's not Blackfeet. He's not. But that doesn't matter. You know, we just want to try to reach him. His mother died of a drug overdose. My uncle had been working with her. Now, I knew about drug overdoses and stuff like that, and I'd heard that people died, but I had never met anyone who I wasn't never been that close to it, and who'd lost his mother in this awful fashion, and who had no father. This was not the world I came from, being from Connecticut, you know. So my uncle left, and he just left me to go talk to this kid. Very intimidating. And the idea that I would be an influence on him was ridiculous, because his charisma was so strong, and he was very sort of quiet, and but when he spoke, it was pretty forceful. People picked on him a lot, like he was, and that's the next lesson. I'd be walking along with him, and people would shout stuff that you can't imagine how vile, or maybe you can. And I thought, this doesn't happen to me when I walk down the street. I did have long hair. People would yell stuff like, get a haircut, or get a job, or you're a cute girl, or something like that. But they weren't saying that kind of thing. They were offering to kill him in all sorts of ways, and vile racial epithets. And often he would get in trouble. And I was with him on one occasion where a bunch of youths like just set on him, and he said, they're marching toward us, and he says, you take the big guy, I'll take the guy in the pink shirt, and whatever, you know. And I'm like, I don't know. My strategy was be funny or run away, you know. So that was what I did. I just took off and ran to the police station, and I said, my friend, they're beating up my friend. And the police guy said, well, who's your friend? And I said his name, and the cop said, well, you better get better friends. And they wouldn't help, you know, until I played the uncle card, because everyone knew my uncle. And I said, I'm Uncle, I'm Bill Burkhart's nephew, and I'm trying to help this. And they go, oh, geez. All right, guys, we got the minister's nephew. We're gonna get in trouble if we don't. So they broke it up, and he'd been injured pretty badly, because he fought him one and he fought the next, and he had to go to the hospital, and my uncle came and got him out of the hospital. Now, they didn't get in trouble. He got arrested. Basically for getting beat up. It would happen over and over again. This can be such a long story, but to make it a long story short, he would be at uncle's Tuesday night dinners, and my uncle would say, he'd use his real name, but he called himself Kills the Sky. And I always call him that. And he told me never say that other name, and I've never said it since, you know. So Kills would sit at dinner. He was the most together of all these guys. And my uncle would say, what's everyone's plans 5 years from now, you know? And these guys, I don't have any plans, I'll be dead, you know. And meanwhile, Kills would say, 5 years, I'm going to be a guide in Alaska. And then so everyone started quizzing him. And these hobos are pretty good at living outside, you know. So they're like, what would you do if we dropped you in the middle of the forest with no clothes? And he go, oh, we'd be fine. Billy and I could do this, you know. And the two of us would go on this fanciful how we would do it and stuff. So it was super fun. And it brought life to all these guys and helped them regain whatever sanity was available to them, you know.
Yeah.
In a normal family setting, with good food, and they could take a shower and things like that. This is a ministry that I think all should emulate instead of the ministries of exclusion that are all around our country now. Why? I don't know.
And I think anybody that watches this will be also very pleased to hear this backstory, because you've not put all of him in one character. You've spread him, well, you have kind of, but you've also spread out other elements of his life into other characters that you're featuring in the book. And it's wonderful.
Thank you. It's true. It's no exact character, but some elements from all of this, you know, so bits of my uncle appear maybe in Clay Marvelette. So one fine day, my uncle says at dinner, he says, you know what, guy? Oh, well, Lucky got beat up badly this time. And he was in the hospital for 2 weeks. He had 45 stitches in his face, and he had bruised kidney. And I mean, really serious. Adults did this. They stopped their car and I wasn't there, jumped out with rebar wire, which is heavy iron rods, and just beat him within an inch of his life for no reason, except their hatred and racism. And so my uncle, we got him out of the hospital, and my uncle said, and it's another long story. The judge wanted to give him a bus ticket to San Francisco, one-way ticket. My uncle said, the judge was in my uncle's church. He's like, you can't do that, Judge. What will happen to this boy in San Francisco? You know, that doesn't serve anyone. I will take him, remand him to me. So the judge kind of put him in my uncle's care. And my uncle said, you can't get back on the street now. You're just going to get clobbered. So you guys are going camping. So he the next day, he drove us up to Bob Marshall Wilderness, 1,000,000+ acres, to a little road. And he said, dirt road up there. He goes, here's the topo map, have a quick look. And, you know, Kills was just like, okay, I see where the landmarks are. Oh, here we lines. And he goes, and I'll meet you at this road. He shows us on the map. I'll meet you in 2 weeks. Get there however you can, and keep track of the days, because the days are the first thing you'll lose. And I use that very line in the book at some point. Clay Marvelette says it. And I said, can we have the map? He goes, no, I don't want you to ruin my map. He gave us little packets of fish hooks, fly fishing leader, no poles or anything. Kills had his big knife, and canteens. That's all. We had nothing. Only what clothes we were wearing. And because it's Montana, it's dry. There's no bugs, so it has some advantages. But no matches, nothing like that. And off we went. Kills was very good at it. I was very good at fishing, so we caught fish all the way along, no problem. We invented all these ways to do. With the first night, where I'm like, how are we gonna cook these fish? And Kills takes a little ball of tinder, the underbark of a cedar, and takes his knife against a big quartz rock. So I realized that's why we've stopped here, because there's a big quartz rock. Bam, one try. He lights the tinder and builds a fire, cook the fish. And I think, great, let's build it up and we'll have and he's like, we got to get out of here. You can't, not for the bears, although that's true too, but he was afraid of people. He didn't want to have a bright fire that anyone could see for miles around.
Right.
as it got dark. So we walked another few miles, and then we just walked miles every day. Whatever Kill said, we did, and he found all sorts of things to eat, and he was so good at it. And and we'd lie there at night and look at the stars, and he had his own constellations. And the one I remember, I still see it, is Volkswagen Bus. It was one of because he hadn't had an education, because he wasn't allowed at the Indian school because he wasn't Indian, and he wasn't allowed at the white school. He'd gotten kicked out in 5th grade and never allowed back.
Oh,
And no one thought to, thought of him as a truant. They just thought of him as a unwelcome. So that's another reason my uncle was trying to keep him educated. The librarians helped him at the town library.
you survived the 2 weeks.
He not just survived, but we had a blast, and we basically fell in love. I mean, we were not in a romantic way or sexual way, but we were just so tight. And I saw the best man that Kills could be, because there was no pressures on him. He could just be the philosopher that he was, the very gentle person that he was, and not on the defensive every second. And we made it easily. And I lost track of the days. Like Kills would make so much fun of me when I'd say, "Is it Tuesday?" You go, "Just forget about the days. It's whatever day it is. It's today. It's today." And which is a great lesson. And then
It really is.
and we just walked. I didn't think too hard. Kills was apparently on top of it. Oh, we found one place that we stayed several days. It had an old settlers' huts, and it was fabulous, with a brook and all the things and things to eat. And that's exactly where Lucky and Sindra spend their wilderness idol, in that spot.
It just settled in your brain, and
Settled in my
you
brain.
could describe it from memory because you had such a formative time there. Yeah.
Such a formative time. And then so one day we popped out on this road, and I was like, "Why are we stopping?" He goes, "We're here." And about 20 minutes later, my uncle pulls up in his Land Rover.
Holy cow! That's incredible.
It was incredible.
What a character! What a person! What a human being!
But to both Kills and my uncle, they didn't even marvel at the fact that we got to the same place at the same moment. They thought that was made perfect.
And you're like 15, 16 years old here?
At that, I think I probably just turned 15, and my birthday's in August, and I went back a couple of summers. The next summer, Kills was less available. He'd gotten in with some worse people, very troublesome people, and I was too afraid to hang out with him. And then the summer after that, I was back just briefly, and he was unapproachable. He'd fallen into some serious drug stuff and bad people. But in the meantime, I went to church camp, and I met a girl, and I had a real love story with her. And so at this beautiful church camp. So when it came time to finally get the story written, I put it in a woman's point of view, so they could be in love and have a love story. That's something I understood. Could I do a gay love story? No, I don't get that. But someone could have. But to have it, a woman's point of view, made it possible for me to create a world I know something about. But also, I was able to get the thing written finally, because it had always been so painful. I left out one thing, which is in the months after I left the last time, my uncle would write me letters, that beautiful old school handwriting, very similar to my mom's. I was maybe 25 or 26. He wrote me and said, "I don't know if you remember this guy," but he said his real name, but he was beaten to death in an altercation at such and such place, And I was devastated. I was devastated partly because I couldn't believe my uncle said, "I don't know if you remember this guy." I don't know why it struck me that way, and I couldn't tell anyone about it for whatever reason. I couldn't get it off my chest or out of my heart, and it just got deeper and deeper buried. So when I would try to write about it, it was just too painful. Meanwhile, the girl story, we tried a long distance. We wrote letters. There was no other way. We wrote letters for a long time, and eventually it petered out, and that was also somewhat painful. Nothing like Kills' death.
Right.
And she just died recently too, I heard.
Oh, wow.
Now we're old, so it's not as shocking, but
Well, you
uh,
have given both of them such an incredible tribute.
I brought him back to life
Yeah.
for myself. It wasn't my intent exactly, but
Yeah.
I was able to spend that time with him and extrapolate him into being alive and grown up.
Yeah.
Again, that might be a spoiler. And
Yeah.
uh, but also I could redeem him. In
Yeah.
other words, I could give him his best life
Yeah.
and not the part that killed him.
Hmm.
But not take the racism out and in fact make that a big part of the story. And
It is a
uh,
big part of the story, and
yeah,
it's the 1960s was an absolutely horrible time for that. And so
yeah.
I
Well,
love,
and so are the 90s, and it turns out so is it now. It
yes.
turns out we didn't fix anything, and
Mm,
or not
mm,
much. I mean, some, of course, some
mm.
progress has been made and kept. That's good. But so I did move it to the 90s. Then the next thing is to make this potentially very tragic tale come out okay. So that was really, especially during COVID,
Yeah.
a happy ending seemed like a good idea. Although I had my original ending was not. It was, so I tried out different ways to
And
how will this play out. And I very much let the story tell me what it wanted to be, and then let some readers read it and give me their ideas. So
great.
that's the basics of where it came from.
It's
Little
outstanding.
threads and pieces,
Yeah.
and somehow one's imagination just weaves
Yeah.
out of those threads, weaves a whole new reality.
It's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. And it's not just Lucky and Sindra that are the characters in it. The
Oh
other
no.
characters that you have in it actually bring humor, which is surprising, based on what you used as the base for the story.
Mm,
The humor is a wonderful element to it,
yeah.
and obviously their love story is just amazing.
Oh,
So
thanks.
yeah, I really congratulate you on pulling it together, and it sounds like it was at times painful and at times quite successful. So yeah.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun with it, really. I
Yeah.
loved coming in and seeing what they would do. I had to cut a large amount of the idol because I I just couldn't get enough of all the fun things they were doing. And then I was remembering the fun I had had both with my girlfriend and with my friend Kills.
Right.
We laughed a lot. Would have to be funny.
Yeah.
And and the trouble's only intermittent.
Yeah.
But so I wanted to show life as normal before I
Yeah.
had to let reality intrude.
Exactly. Exactly. And you brought in Michener on this.
Well,
This author was obviously an inspiration to you.
what's funny is I read Mishner like in high school, and then college kind of beat it out of me that it was a big commercial
Oh,
pot boilers. I mean, he's not considered one of the great writers, probably unfairly in a way, but yeah, he so I brought that into it too, because Arto comes and says, Mishner, he's a hack.
yeah, exactly.
But that's
Exactly.
all they've got for entertainment is this one worn out old book. So
Right.
they
Right.
so Cinder reads from it. And
Absolutely.
then it has, it ties little threads from that literature into, but just not forced or anything, just a little here and there.
It's another little character of the other characters that you bring in, the strong Native American background, some of the people from the Reform School. There's a lot that you bring in, and Michener plays just a little character just to give it a little bit of a, yeah.
And also he represents a certain kind of America, as does Lucky's heritage. Lucky's heritage comes from all sorts of threads that are the American threads.
Yes.
And if you add Sindra, and if you add Franciella, and if you add the big Swedish guy, you get
Yes.
more and more of what the American threads that
The
come
melting
together.
pot.
And,
Yes.
and they come together and they work, or else they come together and they clash. And so both things happen in the book. Um, but and I don't want to write a big obvious allegory. It's not an allegory, it's a story. But Lucky contains multitudes, as Walt Whitman said, and
And
they
Sindra is a great narrator.
And Sindra has no clue how smart she is herself, and how wonderful she herself is. So she just talks very straight and puts
Yeah.
herself down a little, and she's amazed that Lucky loves her and finds her so wonderful. Everyone loves her, but she doesn't accept that because the adults in her life, especially the women, have been very brutal to her. Her mother, Dora, the camp director, particularly brutal. And a message has been shoved into her psyche about being a woman. And I think that's another all-American thing is these messages we get from without that inform how we act in the world. And I think Lucky tries to, doesn't try, it's just natural for him to not let her see herself that way.
Right.
And in the end, it works,
Yeah, it totally
he,
did.
so no one's rescuing Lucky and no one's rescuing Sindra, but together they managed to prevail despite an incredibly brutal world.
Yes. Yes. Wow. We are quickly running out of time here, unfortunately. I'm proud to admit that I definitely want to continue this conversation when we stop.
Next we meet.
Yes, so sorry about that to the audience. So tell me about the next project that you're working on.
Well, I've just finished another book. You might seem like this is brand new and the paperback's just coming out, which is true. But of course, I delivered a year before the hard, so it's been in production for over 2 years. So in the meantime, I wrote another book, a shorter book, and Algonquin is going to publish that probably in about a year after the paperback or a little longer. So sometime next spring or spring 2024 or later,
Right. And what's the title of that?
The working title is Beep.
Okay.
And the protagonist and narrator is a Costa Rican squirrel monkey.
Okay.
Who saves the world. So
I can't wait to see it. That sounds wonderful.
It's kind of like Curious George meets the Terminator or something. But wow. This one is an allegory. So
okay. Good.
But it's about climate change.
All right. Very good. Yeah. Well, I really, really appreciate talking to you about all of this. This has just been a joy.
A joy. I love being back on the show and meeting the new generation taking over. Is so great that this show has been, and the Cape Cod Writers Center has been around for so long, doing such wonderful things. And it's part of our family. My wife and I were there for a conference while she was pregnant, and then brought the baby back the next year. So we're invested, and I really love being back on the show.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you being here. This is wonderful. If you've enjoyed this, if you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. If you'd like to see more, check us out on our website, capecodwritercenter.org, through our Facebook page and on YouTube. Thank you again for watching Books in the World.